This is AFKast, the video game podcast. And here's your host, Malcolm Sheaver.
I'm sure as gamers you have gotten mad at games you love for some of the dumb glitches that occur, and obviously we blame some video game companies for that. Sometimes it feels like the game companies are lagging behind, or that they don't care about the player base, or even that they care more about getting their big title update out before they fix the glitches. This week on AFKast, I'm here to confirm and deny your suspicions on glitches in the gaming industry. First of all, I want to talk about the game companies. So as soon as they release the main game, they are already working on DLC games. At least that's what gaming companies typically do, which means that any glitches found by the community tend to be dealt later rather than sooner, and sometimes don't even make it to the title update that they are coming out with the DLC, which sucks. And I agree that for the most part, they should try and get that done by at least the DLC that they are working on to patch the glitches. But what a lot of people need to understand as well is that every time that a code is released to patch a bug or glitch within the game, that means that there is now more code that is, now able to have bugs and glitches in it. Which is obviously not ideal, but that also means that you're going to have a constant loop of bugs and glitches within the game, which means that companies for the most part will only focus on the game-breaking stuff that is causing you not to be able to actually play the game. And this seems unfair, except to the people who want those DLCs to come out. And by unfair, I mean to the people that want the glitches fixed immediately. Not just in general, but if the DLCs don't come out, then that also means that there is no player base to be kept alive, because the DLCs is kind of what keep people wanting to play the game. At least that's how a lot of game companies see that. And a main reason why they see it that way is because of you guys, the consumer, who are constantly asking them for something new, something better within the game, that they can play, because you guys can be insane sometimes and finish a game within 3 days. You guys are hungry for content for your favorite games, which is fine, which is completely fine, but that puts some pressure on the gaming companies. And another thing that I can't entirely explain is why some companies release only part of their game and then release the rest of the game within the next week. Some games are even later than that. And so a few examples are Halo 5 Guardians. The past couple Call of Duties have been like that. And Fallout 76, it wasn't purposeful, but Fallout 76 basically finished their game within their last big title update. And that wasn't within the week, that was a year and a half later. But the reason that was is because they thought their game was whole until the community got back to them. And now a year and a half later, they stitched back together the game. I'd recommend that you listen to my podcast episode on that subject, because I really do think that for those of you who own Fallout 76, it really deserves another shot if you stopped playing it pretty much immediately. I really do think that right now it deserves another shot because it feels like a Fallout game now. But back to the subject at hand here. And then another game is Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And I don't think I've seen as many people upset with this, but this is kind of what I'm upset with right now, is that they kind of had the story kind of felt short for the game, because the story was really short, but the thing is that the story isn't actually finished. There are technically 3 episodes to the story. So you have the first episode, which was released on launch, and then you had the second episode, which recently came out, that had Sam Fisher in it, which is from Splinter Cell. And they've had previous Sam Fisher stuff in the game, but that's kind of just been a 1 or 2 mission type thing. But now this is actually really important to the storyline of Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And then they'll also be releasing an episode 3 in the future that is also finishing the story, talking about Trey Stone, who we didn't even get to encounter at all on yet. So we didn't get to encounter him at all in Ghost Recon Breakpoint. And yet he seems to be the main focus in the storyline besides Walker, who you kill throughout the story. And that's kind of where they finish it, is kind of where you kill Walker and where you shut down a section of the drones. And I'll add a spoiler warning there because I did not give a spoiler warning at all for that. So, but once you finish that portion of the game, it kind of just stops there. And honestly, I thought there was going to be more, and it kind of just ended there. And it didn't really feel like the story was complete. And then they released episode 2, and then I realized that more of the story completed there. And then I saw that Trey Stone and the 3 other people that are like the main part of the security for Sentinel were being released in episode 3. And sure, once again, a spoiler, Ian Blake was already killed, but I'm pretty sure they're still going to be adding stuff for him. So, and the thing is that these DLCs aren't free. These DLCs will cost $40 in order to get the year pass for this stuff, which is basically telling me that I'm going to have to pay $100 total and wait for about a year in order for the game to fully come out. Now, if they had just planned on releasing it this year and still only having you pay $60, plus the fact that it won't be a super delayed update for the game, I think I've actually would have preferred that because, I mean, one, it doesn't feel like they're kind of lacking of a game. They would have had more time to perfect it, and it would have been released with a full storyline, and I wouldn't have to pay $100 instead of $60 to get a full game. And sure, the game still, I think, is worth $60. I mean, you had the raid, and the whole game looked amazing. Not to mention that you've also got the 2 Terminator missions that came out that were really fun. But it's just, now that I know that the rest of the storyline you have to pay $40 for, it doesn't feel like I have the complete game. Not to mention that there are still a lot of glitches and stuff that occurred at the beginning of the game that they still haven't fixed and haven't really gave out a plan of how they're going to fix that stuff. And some of that stuff was game breaking as well. Like, my game is still crashing a lot. And I know that was a big concern for a lot of players. And I'm just wondering why they have this huge year planned out for this entire storyline that I have to pay $100 for, but they're not at all addressing any of the glitches within the game, especially the game-breaking stuff, which, while having about 4 months to work that stuff out, they didn't fix. So that's frustrating. And also, one thing that they did introduce as well that was free was the immersive mode as well, which I really like that. So I will thank you for that as well, but still, come on. Like, seriously, it seems unfair almost. But I'm not entirely sure why companies do this, because it just causes people to have to wait to play the game once more, and people with bad internet don't always get to update when they want to. Like Bryce M., who comes onto AFKast every once in a while, he does not have very great internet, okay? And he has to send his Xbox to somewhere else completely that has better internet, and he doesn't always have the accessibility to do that, which means that we usually only play games that he has updated at that time. And what usually happens is we buy a game, we get to play it for about 3 days. It depends on like how soon he was able to get it downloaded. And then all he has to do is wait to send it back once again because they come out with another like 30 gigabyte update for whatever reason. So I'm wondering why those games don't just wait a week and then come out with a full thing. I mean, I understand that they're letting people play test within the first week and then they fix glitches, which is cool and all, but then why aren't they releasing the full game and then coming out with a patch later? Because all that comes out is new content and a patch, but why don't they just release the full game and then come out with a patch about a week later? And even then, they shouldn't come out with it within a week. I mean, it's nice that it does. And honestly, part of it is that you guys pressure them into coming out with it in a week. And that's kind of frustrating. But at the same time, they really don't need to. I mean, you guys can survive within the game for, at least a month. I mean, you guys have... There's still a huge fan base for games like Anthem or Fallout 76 that bombed hard when they first came out and didn't have a redemption. I mean, Fallout 76 now does, but before there was still a huge fan base for those games. So you guys can last at least a month if those people can last for years, or a year, about a year and a half. So we really don't need that stuff, and part of that is on the companies, and part of that is on you guys. So please don't be blaming the companies for all of this stuff, because part of it is you guys too. But some people also blame the companies for not playtesting well enough, when some glitches are possibly hard to find that you people somehow find immediately. And I mean, they obviously don't know where to look, because you can't really look for something that like is hidden. Like, I mean, you can look for it, but it's not helpful unless you have a clue, and they have no clue. All that happens is that there's more of a chance that millions of people, at least a few people out of millions of players, will find a glitch rather than a playtesting group of about 15 to 20 people. And sure, suggestions have been made that they should increase the amount of people playtesting the game, and I agree with this, but the reason they don't usually increase it is to limit how much it gets out to the public. That's why when they have streamers or reviewers come in, they limit how much they can record or talk about the games. Like, the more people there are, the more it increases the chance of them talking, even if it's by accident. I mean, you've already seen streamers like, I'm trying to find an example, like Shroud. I'm pretty sure Shroud at one point accidentally leaked information about Octane in Apex Legends before Octane was actually released. Now, he wasn't supposed to do that, even though he got to playtest the game. And so I think that the more people that they allow to playtest the game, or at least playtest updates of the game, the more likely it is to get out, which is why usually for title updates and stuff, they don't actually have an open beta or people come in to playtest, because they just want to release the title update for the general public to be like, oh my gosh, this is amazing, without any leaks. Now, you guys obviously find glitches, and instead of saying how good the game is, you guys trash the glitches that came out, which is mean. But at the same time, it's needed. I just wish there was a little bit more positive support behind that as well. Give some pros and cons, not just the cons. So that way, at least the teams at these companies know that they did something right. But now one question remains. Why do the companies not at least acknowledge the backlash on glitches with a "we are trying to fix" or "we will have this done by" statement? Sometimes you do see it on forums, but that's not usually enough for the general public who don't look through the forums. I think companies are afraid to ruin their reputation online where more people can see that stuff by saying that there are glitches in the game. But I guarantee those companies that if they let the player base know what's going on, you'll have us to support your back, and probably a bigger fan base, honestly. I mean, obviously you're going to lose some players because they're going to be like, oh no, these guys have glitches, I'm not going to buy that game, or I'm not going to play that game anymore. But those are also people who just don't understand games at all, that every game has glitches and you can't really get out of them. But on the devil's advocate side of that, legally they can't always say. There are always contracts between the company and those who program, design, and work on the game that aren't part of the company itself. When you see it rolling through the credits, or even sometimes when the game is starting up, you'll see other companies that worked on the game but don't actually own the game. And they might not want their reputation ruined either, because they could have been responsible for those glitches. And if word gets out that they were responsible for those glitches, then guess what? They will become under fire from us, the community, which once again, mean, but also other gaming companies won't want to hire them, which means that all of those pros that came from that gaming company that put hard work into that game, and I guarantee you that there are a lot more pros that came from those companies in their work than there were cons. But then if they're getting a huge backlash, no company is going to hire them to do work for them. And so that's the problem right there. And it's what I want to talk about next, is the consumer. Because honestly, you guys are the other problem in this. This goes about 50-50, and the consumer is definitely part of that. So you criticize these games for their glitches, and yet you still buy all the content from them, whether that is DLC, cosmetics, or even merchandise from the game. And all that does is support them, for one, for all their glitches that they put out and stuff like that. And I'm not saying not to love the game and do that stuff. I'm saying don't contribute mixed emotions towards the game. So you can't always say cons and then buy their stuff. Like that's not how that works. Because right now companies feel that it's more important to get more like content out to the gamers and to the consumer and everything like that than it is to fix the glitches in the game. Now, like, that's not okay, and I know I've said that before as well, but it's just like I'm reiterating my point because, I mean, not to mention some of you on social media don't even say what's wrong. You just say stuff like your game is glitching the hell out, or what the hell is wrong with your game, and those are actual tweets I found, by the way, instead of giving them useful information for them to go in and fix. So if you're going to say that there are glitches in the game, say what the glitch is, what you might have done that caused the glitch, or even if it was just something that was happening in the world, just let them know that as well, that it probably wasn't your fault. I'm not saying it was your fault, I'm just saying that it wasn't something you did to activate that glitch. Any information you give will allow them to get closer and closer to figuring out that glitch, because they could maybe go into the world hundreds of times and they would never come across that glitch, and you might go into it once and accidentally step foot on the wrong pebble in the game and it causes a building to disappear. That's honestly how some glitches work, and playtesting it 1,000 times isn't always going to find that glitch. And I guarantee you that they have found tons of glitches in games with 15 to 20 people that they have completely cut out of the game that you guys don't even know about. So you can't put them under fire about this stuff. And especially if you're not giving them any useful information whatsoever when you're just pointing out glitches, that's also not fair. Now, sure, you can diss the game in your own time, just don't try and diss the companies without information. But you also have to keep in mind that fixes usually take at least a few weeks, and it's usually only takes a few weeks if it is game breaking. And by game breaking, I mean that you literally can't play the game. A game breaking glitch is usually considered to be something that won't even allow you to progress within the game. So like that could be your game crashing, that could be your character isn't loading in the game, that could be that something is causing you not to be able to go down a certain path in the game that you're supposed to go down, anything like that. And for those who don't know, there was actually an exploit or a glitch in the Division 2 where people could get infinite damage, basically making it so that way they can fly through the hardest difficulties because they could instantly kill their opponents. And they could even go through like the raid in the game, which is one of the hardest things to do in the game, and getting all the really hard to get loot and hard to earn loot, by the way, for people who did it legitimately in the game so easily. And Ubisoft reset everyone back to how they were when the title update that caused the glitch came out, which was about 3 weeks into people using the exploit. And honestly, I'm pretty sure that they released that. They patched that exploit as soon as they could, because it was making it unfair for a lot of people who couldn't get that good loot that quickly. And also it was unfair to the people they were playing with, because guess what? They got banned too. And that's not Ubisoft's fault, because most of the people that were boosted from the people who were doing the exploit were being boosted on purpose. So please don't be mad at Ubisoft if you were accidentally completely wiped, not completely wiped, but wiped back to the beginning of Warlords of New York, which was the update. Don't be mad at Ubisoft. Be mad at the people who exploited the game in the first place, because people were so mad at Ubisoft even though they didn't do anything wrong. You guys who did the exploit are mad about not giving a warning even though they have a terms of service which in there basically says not to exploit bugs that occur in the game. And not to mention, it should be Ubisoft who's mad for so many people exploiting their game, because so many people found that exploit, posted it online, and then a ton more people used the exploit. And if you know of an exploit within a video game, don't use it, because guess what? It's not intended for the game. That's why they call it an exploit. You should just leave it alone and play the game how it's meant to be played, because there could be things like this where people get punished. And if you get punished, then guess what? You deserve it because you exploited their game. And the people who did the damage exploit in the game got exactly what they deserved. It's a punishment. Deal with it. It's not the developer's fault for having it in the game because they had no idea it was there. They didn't release the game intentionally with this exploit in it. And if they did, they probably didn't have a fix with it and were hoping to get a fix out before people did it. And also probably weren't expecting a huge chunk of their player base to use this exploit to get a one-up on the game, which is completely unfair to the company. Another game to mention would be Rainbow Six Siege, and I'm sorry Ubisoft for attacking you guys today with Breakpoint, Division 2, and now this, but but you guys have good examples right now, sadly. But recently they came out with the title update Operation Void Edge for Rainbow Six Siege, which caused the game to break tremendously, and even though the developers knew it was broken, and I'll give you a couple of examples of what was breaking. You couldn't always walk through doors because you could see barricades that were covering the door broken, but you still couldn't walk through it as if there was one there. Or you couldn't see through it because the barricade was still there on your screen, but it wasn't there on someone else's screen. And there were all sorts of things like that, like there were different clipping issues within the game. People's items weren't even working at some point. And honestly, just if you can probably find a list online of a lot of glitches that were occurring at that time, but they still released it. Now, a lot of people got mad and said that, you guys released an update that broke the game. Now, I only blame Ubisoft for half of that. The other half is the community, because you guys would have been pissed off if they hadn't released the update, even though you guys knew about what was coming to the game, that it was going to be breaking. And because this whole thing was play tested, there's always a beta testing of about 2 weeks before the update is released. And you guys would have gotten pissed off whether they had, if they had bugs in it and they released it, which they did, you guys got mad. But if they hadn't released it, even though you knew they had bugs, you guys would still be mad because they said that they would be releasing it at this time on their roadmap. So which is it? Which is it between having it completely taken down for having bugs, or should they release it even though it has bugs? You guys get mad either way, and you're not giving the company a very easy way to get out of that situation, because I'm even getting confused, and I'm sure that the professional communications teams are even getting confused, that your guys' reaction to it could be either or. They don't know what to do in that situation. And you guys honestly need to be mature and understand that it is hard to get some of these glitches out, and that they already have plans that they need to attend to first. I don't mean to sound rude or anything, but you guys can sometimes act immature, and I know I never have to the companies though. I don't try to say it to the companies themselves. Sure, I'll get mad in my own time, be like, why the hell did you do this? But you need to be logical and mature about these decisions that you make, especially when confronting these companies, because the consumer player base are putting so much pressure on the companies without even thinking about the bigger picture in the situation, that you're putting a lot of pressure onto these people. So I just want you guys to think about that. Think about everything that I said during this podcast today. Just please think before you act, and if you do act, at least be polite and considerate to the companies you are criticizing. And that is all I have for you today. I hope you guys do understand. I'm not mad at any of you. I'm just disappointed in those who did those actions towards these gaming companies, especially everything that went down in Division 2. I mean, a huge number of people got mad at Ubisoft for fixing an exploit in the game that they were abusing. Does that really seem fair? Because it really isn't. But anyway, besides that, make sure that you check out my newly founded Patreon. I already have one patron to thank so far, and that is Tyler, and I'm going to attempt this last name, like Seisharon Neufeld. And I know I botched your last name, but that's all right. Make sure you help me out on Patreon so I can afford to keep coming out with these podcast episodes. Yeah, game on.
Find AFKast on Instagram and Twitter, @AFCommunity, for any updates on future podcast episodes. If you want to join the community Discord, find the link in the description or on the website, afcommunity.com.